All right, so I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Each month we've been discussing a different topic, and the topics we select are based on your feedback and suggestions. So this month's topic is legumes, the pulse of nutrition. So this is one of the wonderful foods God has created for us, and we're going to explore what are the health benefits and how can we incorporate more of them. Um, Before we start, a little disclaimer, the information on this presentation is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information, is for general information and educational purposes only. Also, before we jump into today's topic, I'd like to answer questions that I didn't get to answer from previous presentation. And somebody asked me a question last time, if it's bad to eat dried fruits with sulfites. I don't know if this person is here today. If not, I think it can benefit others too, because it may be a question that some of you have asked, and I promised I was gonna look into that. So as I was looking, doing some research on the sulfites on dried fruits, I found out that not all dried fruits have this component added. And the component of the chemical that is added is a preservative called sulfur dioxide. And it's typically added to dried fruits and other foods that they want to preserve a bright, more vivid color. So that's the main purpose. So for the dried fruits that are already dark naturally, like dates, prunes, it's less likely that you're gonna find this preservative. The reason to stay away from sulfur dioxide is if you have our sensitivity to sulfites. And how are you gonna find out? If you eat the foods that have those sulfites and you experience after you eat some stomach cramps or skin rashes or asthma attacks, that can be something that you're sensitive to. The best way to test it if you isolate just eating that food to see if the symptom is really coming from this particular component. But from what I was researching, it tends to affect more people that have asthma. Right? So if you happen to be sensitive to sulfites, if it's something that you already tested and you have identified, it's good to keep in mind that there are other sulfite agents that can be added to processed foods. So I'm including a list of the 6 sulfite containing preservatives that you can find in processed foods. So you're gonna find either the word sulfur or the word sulfite as part of those components. And again, the main reason to stay away is if you have a sensitivity. But I did a quick test. I looked at the foods that I have at my house, the dried fruits, to see which ones had this sulfur dioxide. So those are the dried fruits that I could find at my house, 6 different varieties. And the ones I expect to find this component most likely would be the apricots, the pineapple, or the golden raisins, because again, they want to preserve those that have a more of a bright color to prevent the color from getting darker. So when I look at the label, sure enough, the bananas, the only ingredient from my dry bananas was bananas. When I looked at the apricot, I could find the sulfur dioxide mentioned here, and they add that there is to maintain the color. I was surprised that the dry pineapple did not contain the sulfur dioxide, so that's a good thing. Not that I have a sensitivity, but the less preservatives, I guess, the better. The dark raisins did not have the sulfur dioxide, but the golden raisins did. So we can see here the sulfur dioxide listed. And last but not least, my dates. They did not have sulfur dioxide. I don't know if you can read this quite small here, but the only ingredients on the dates was dates. So I hope that answered the question that not all dried fruits are going to have sulfites. And when it does have, most likely it's going to be in the light colored ones. And you just need to stay away if you have a sensitivity or if you're completely opposed to having foods that have some type of preservatives, which is going to be based on your individual decision. All right, moving on to today's topics. So some people call this group legumes, some people call pulses. which it is. It's actually both. So legumes is the name of the family of plants that grow in pods. But some individuals and some agencies have decided to separate a subgroup from the family of legumes into pulses, which is the dried beans, the dried peas, chickpeas, and lentils, so the dried fruit or the dried seed inside those pods. Also, they did not include as part of pulses soybeans or peanuts because nutritionally they are different because they have more of a fat content. Whereas the pulses that you see listed below here, they are pretty low in fat. So that's why you may see the separation. Also, fresh peas and fresh beans are part of the legumes, but not part of the pulses. So I hope that clarifies. And for today's presentation, we are going to be discussing more of the health benefits of pulses. So that's going to include any type of dry beans, any type of dry peas, chickpeas, and lentils. So let's take a look at the nutritional content of pulses before we dive into the health benefits. So they are low in fat and low in saturated fat, cholesterol free, the same as any plant foods because cholesterol is only found in animal foods, low sodium, high source of fiber. They have a significant to high source of folate, high source of protein, significant to high source of iron, and the difference or significant to high for some of those components is because it varies from bean to bean. To be considered high in any particular nutrient, it needs to meet the criteria of having meeting 20% of your daily needs. So that's why some of the beans or some of the pulses I found to be significant. Some of them were high in some of those components. Pulses are significant to high source of magnesium, significant to high source of phosphorus, significant source of potassium, significant to high source of zinc, high source of phytochemicals. And if you want to know what are the benefits of each one of those individual components, I invite you to read the article that is going to be posted at the NAD website, because for the sake of time, we don't have a chance to dive into each one of them. But in future presentations, I'm sure we are going to explore those different nutrients. So because of all this amazing concentration of nutrients, a lot of researchers and a lot of institutions are recognizing the benefits of substituting plant for animal protein. And Harvard University is one of those places that they recognize that just by doing this, you can extend the life for people with health risks. And I consider every human being to have some type of health risk. So the benefit really is for all of us. This table here includes a selection of an example of dry beans, lentils, chickpeas, and split peas, just so you can kind of see the concentration of those nutrients. This is going to be in the article that you can read later, so you can look, in more details. But I'm going to highlight a few things here. As you probably know, that those are foods that we eat cooked, so we shouldn't be eating them raw. And because we eat them cooked, they actually absorb quite a bit of water. And that's one of the benefits, because as you cook, most now their weight now is water, which brings the calories down. So you can see, the percentage of the weight that now is water, which is calorie free. And that's the benefit that we can get from these foods. The calories is pretty similar across the board. Chickpeas has a little bit higher calorie content because it's a little bit higher in fat. And if you watch our presentation on fat 2 months ago, you remember that anything that the fat goes up, the calories are going to go up as well. The sodium content, you can see, is pretty small. In fiber, this is one of the areas that these foods really shine, because you can get pretty much half of your daily needs of fiber in 1 cup of this food. So you're going to see in another slides that a lot of health agencies are recommending that we incorporate pulses frequently so we can meet our fiber intake. Also provides quite a bit of protein, as you can see listed here. So it's a significant source of protein and all the other nutrients we talked about as well. So what are the health benefits that have been studied when it comes to pulses? Studies show that it helps to maintain a healthy body weight. So there was a review, there's a survey that is conducted from time to time in the US called the US National Health and Examination Survey, for short NHANES. And they found that people who reported eating pulses were more likely to have a lower body weight and waist circumference. And there was a more recent research conducted in Canada that looked at 9 clinical trials, and they concluded that meals that contain approximately 160 grams of pulses, which is close to 1 cup cooked, led to a 31% greater satiety effect than the control meals. So they tested people eating beans or pulses in their meals versus people eating meals without pulses, and the people that ate the pulses, they felt full longer. So that's what satiety means. That's your sensation of feeling full until you decide it's time to eat again. So it prolonged the time that they felt satisfied in between meals. The particular components in pulses that provide this benefit for weight management is the amount of protein. So protein stimulates the release of hormones that cause the feeling of fullness. So because this is a food that is quite high in protein, it helps you to feel full. The fiber content increases the chewing time, so it takes longer for you to chew and swallow the food. And when the fiber gets to your stomach, it delays the gastric emptying, so it takes longer for the food to leave the stomach. So it leads to early satiation, which is when you decide to stop eating during that meal, and prolonged satiety, which is how long you stay full. Pulses also contain something called resistant starch, which reduces the calories consumed because not all of the starch in pulses are digested. So they have components that actually resist digestion, so you end up not absorbing all the calories from pulses. Also, it helps with blood sugar control. So their fiber content slows down the emptying of the stomach, and because of that, the carbohydrate being released from the starches is going to be released very slowly, which gives a better chance for your body to process versus foods that are low in fiber and high added sugars that can send a spike of blood sugar and may be harder to control. Also, because it displaces less favorable food options, which are those with less fiber, it helps you to get better blood sugar control. Like I mentioned before, they have substances that inhibit the enzymes that are required to digest the starch. So you end up with some of the starch not being digested or absorbed. That's what we call resistant starch. And that starch that is not absorbed is going to serve as food for the bacteria in your gut, which is going to, in turn, ferment the starch and is going to release a substance called propionate. And when propionate gets into your bloodstream, it helps to slow down the emptying of the stomach for the second meal. So that's what a lot of scientists are calling the second meal effect. So when you eat pulses, it helps you to eat less for 2 meals in a row. And I'm gonna play a short video that explains the second meal effect a little bit better. Let me make sure I have the sound of the computer too. I'm gonna start the video. If the sound is not coming, if Angie can or Phil can raise your hand, let me know. No sound? Okay, so let me see if I'm not finding the place to have the computer sound on.
Good.
When you share screen, there's a little box at the bottom of the window that says like optimized for sound. That might do it.
Optimize for video clip.
Also, share sound is one of those options there.
Okay, so let's change. All right, let's try that again. Is it no?
Still no sound.
No.
You might want to stop sharing, Maggie, and then reshare again and click the checkbox where it says share sound.
Okay.
So when you share screen,
There is a box.
there's,
Yeah, it's clicked.
okay. Is your volume?
I guess we may need to skip because we'll try again at the end. Oops. I wonder if I got off the. I got off the presentation altogether. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. The presentation froze a little bit. Just give me 1 second. Let me see. Are there any questions in the meantime on the chat?
Yes, we had, Denise was asking about pea protein as a supplement.
Using the question about using pea protein as a supplement?
Yes, anything you can speak to on that?
You may have some specific individual situations where it may be needed, but for the most part, protein it's a nutrient that is very easy to get from whole foods. And whenever you isolate just part of the food, you end up losing your other nutrients. So I always give preference for the whole food, and you can find more reasons for that if you watch our presentation on protein on the archives.
Okay, we can put the link to that article there too. So
let me try the video one more time. Because if it doesn't work this time, then we'll try the other. Actually, I don't see now anybody on the Zoom.
We're still here.
Okay. Even if the sound is coming, please let me know so I can continue to play. If not, then I'll stop.
I'm not hearing it.
No?
Is anyone else hearing it?
No.
No? Okay. All right, so we'll leave it for another time. Okay, are the slides still showing?
Yes.
Okay. So other health benefits is to decrease the risk for cardiovascular disease. So the study showed that consuming at least half a cup cooked pulses 4 times a week can lower the risk for cardiovascular disease. It has a lipid lowering effect. So in other words, it helps to decrease cholesterol and triglycerides because of the high fiber content. It also has a positive impact on blood pressure, your platelet activities, and inflammation. So that's the reason eating pulses at least 4 times a week has been found to lower the risk for cardiovascular disease. If you go to the article, I have all the studies that I'm presenting the findings here. You have all the references in the articles. In terms of prevention, cancer prevention, the one that most research agree with is decreasing the risk for colorectal cancer, which according to the American Cancer Society is the third leading cause of death from cancer for both males and females. So there's a significant reason for us to incorporate pulses to help prevent this type of cancer. So let's take a look at what are the benefits and what are the components of pulses they help to decrease the risk for colorectal cancer. So one of them is the dietary fiber, which is fermented by the gut bacteria. And in turn, they also form another substance called butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid that serves to protect the lining of the colon. So it has anti-carcinogenic and anti-inflammatory properties. Other components are the tannins, saponins, and phytochemicals. They also have anti-carcinogenic and antioxidant effects for colorectal cancer. The other studies that have found benefits for prevention of other cancers as well. The Adventist Health Study 1 have found that individuals that consume beans more frequently, at least twice a week, have lower risk for colon cancer, prostate cancer, and pancreatic cancer. Some cancers they didn't find a specific association from this study, but there are other studies that have found a benefit also for lowering the risk of breast cancer, and agree with the prostate cancer that was mentioned here as well. On the other hand, you can see that individuals that eat meat several times a week, they found the opposite effect. It had a significant higher risk for colon cancer, bladder cancer, and ovarian cancer. So this is a study that they mention all the foods, but for the sake of time and because our topic today is legumes, I'm trying to stay more focused on the topic of today. But I wanted to show a contrast. If you replace legumes, if you replace meat with legumes, you can have an even greater benefit because you're lowering the risk just by consuming the legumes, and you're increasing the benefits and reducing the risk for those types of cancer even more just by eliminating meat. Because of all those health benefits, and there are many more that we can talk about, we would assume that populations that live longer, that most likely they are consuming pulses frequently. So in 2005, the National Geographic posted an article called The Secrets of Living Longer. And the main journalist, Dan Buettner, they started looking at areas in the world where people live the longest. And one of those areas was actually Loma Linda in California. And this is a Seventh-day Adventist lady who lived until 104. She died at 104. So this article gave birth to a larger study called the Blue Zones. Maybe some of you have already heard about the Blue Zones.
Mhm.
So those are areas in the world that have been identified to have a greater concentration of centenarians, people that live over 100 years of age. So they identified 5 areas in the world: Okinawa in Japan, Icaria in Greece, Sardinia in Italy, Nicoya in Costa Rica, and Loma Linda in California. And they mention on their website that beans, including fava beans, black beans, soybeans, and lentils, are the cornerstone of most centenarian diets. And if you want to find out more about the centenarian lifestyle, not just the diet, you can visit the website. You can buy the book. But we've been privileged to have the health message which addresses all those lifestyle components as well. some articles, when they put together what those areas have in common, some include legumes, some don't. But the most important thing is across the board, 70 Adventists have been recognized as being eating a diet that includes nuts and beans. Also, the Sabbath as a day of rest have been highlighted as one of the reasons this population lives long, and faith in God. So we have a responsibility to continue to carry those lifestyles so we can enjoy the abundant and long life that God wishes for us. So how often should we consume pulses to have those health benefits?
4 times a week.
According to the dietary guidelines for Americans, they recommend 1.5 cups cooked per week as part of a healthy diet. But if you look at other organizations such as the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research, they recommend much more frequent than that. They actually recommend including pulses in most meals. So now we're gonna have a poll question. I wanna know how often do you consume pulses? So Angel's going to release the question for us. So the result is most of us here today eat pulses 2 to 3 times per week. So 56% of us eat pulses 2 to 3 times per week. Some of us, 4 of us eat most days of the week. 4 of us eat every day. How about gas and bloating? So some people say that then when they eat pulses, or the reason why they don't eat pulses is because of gas and bloating. This may be caused by an intolerance to high levels of a type of carbohydrate present in beans, or pulses in general, called oligosaccharides. So some of those carbohydrates are not digested and they end up being fermented by our gut bacteria, resulting in a possible production of gases and bloating in some people that are sensitive. So we're going to release a second poll question to ask if you have, if you suffer from that when you eat pulses. Okay, so the majority of us experience bloating or gas with some pulses, not all. 40% of us say never, and only 1% said always. So yeah, so I guess that person that says always may need to apply some of the strategies we're going to share next. Or some people just don't tolerate them altogether, which is, you just need to work with other foods that provide those nutrients. But it's encouraging to see that the majority don't experience that, doesn't experience that all the time. So what would be some solutions or some strategies to help with gas and bloating if you experience that? So soaking, if you soak your dry beans, and from all the pulses, dry beans seems to be the one that people, when they are sensitive to in terms of gas and bloating, dry beans seem to be the one that causes the problem the most compared to lentils or peas. So, but if you have found that you have the same side effect with all other pulses, feel free to apply the same strategy too. So the strategy could be soaking your dry beans for at least 3 hours. So most people actually do overnight, and then you change the water before you cook. That helps to reduce those oligosaccharides that some people may be sensitive to. Another strategy is to gradually increase the intake of pulses. Instead of, after the lecture today, you start eating pulses with every meal. If it hasn't been your habit, you want to start slowly and you gradually increase. So that gives your gut bacteria a chance to adapt to the type of fiber and the amount of fiber being introduced. Also, you can experiment with different types of pulses to identify if you have specific intolerances instead of avoiding all pulses altogether. And last but not least, some agencies recommend trying activated charcoal to relieve symptoms when they happen. So there is some scientific evidence that activated charcoal can contribute to reduce excessive intestinal gas production. And according to the European Food Safety Authority, they recommend taking 1 gram of activated charcoal at least 30 minutes before consuming a meal that you have had issues with in the past, and 1 gram after the meal. But make sure to consult your healthcare provider, especially if you're taking medications, because activated charcoal can interact with medications depending on how close you take to the supplement. So you want to verify if you're taking medications, and you don't want to take activated charcoal every single day. So it's good to use other strategies too. Activated charcoal, just if you done all the things and you end up with the symptoms at that point, and if you want to treat with something naturally, activated charcoal can be a good solution. In terms of preparation, there are different ways you can prepare your pulses. If you want to be ready quick, you can use a pressure cooker. You can use a traditional pressure cooker on your stovetop, or you can use an electric pressure cooker, which is what we do here at home to cook our beans. Not so much for lentils. Lentils I prefer to cook on the stove, so that's the second method. Some people like the slow cooker method, which is fine too. So for each type of pulses, you would have to verify the cooking time, and I'm going to provide some resources for you to get information on the cooking time, how much water to add, all of that. Another great benefit from this food group is that it freezes well. So after you cook your pulses, you can freeze, so it can save time. So that's what I do here at home. So when I cook my beans, I cook 2 pounds, and after it cools down a little bit, I freeze half of it, and I keep half in the refrigerator. So that way I don't need to be cooking all the time on those pulses. Let's now move on to some ideas to incorporate more pulses into our diet. And during the breakout sessions, you guys are gonna have the opportunity to share your ideas as well. During the question and answer part, you guys can share more as well. So pulses, you can eat them in so many ways. That's the beauty of this food group. You can eat them in a salad. You can eat them in a form of a patty. You can eat them the Mexican way in the form of, the mashed beans. You can actually put them inside the tortilla shells. You can make burritos. You can roast your chickpeas. You can eat them more soupy, like in a stew. Garbanzo beans have several ways that you can eat it too. So hummus, which is very popular. You can make the mock tuna spread, which a lot of people enjoy. Again, you can put in a salad. You can eat the falafels, which is the traditional Middle Eastern food. It's traditionally prepared, fried, but you can bake it too. You can make chickpea omelet, which is a recipe I'm intending to share in the future. Curry, stews. In terms of white beans, such as lima beans, northern beans, navy beans, you can puree them and add to soups or sauces for a creamy or thickened consistency. And that's what I do when I make my cashew-based Alfredo sauce. I add some type of white beans and I blend it together to thicken the sauce and to add more nutrition to that sauce as well. You can eat them in soups or stews, patties. Kidney beans are very popular to make chili, and you can make vegetarian chili too. You can also add to stews, soups, salads. Make sure, especially when it comes to kidney beans, that they are very well cooked, because there have been reports of improperly cooked kidney beans that led to severe diarrhea and vomiting because of lectins, which is a component in beans, lentils, and peas. But lectins are destroyed once you cook. So as long as you cook it well, you shouldn't have any problems. Black eyed peas can also be used in different ways. You can puree them and make spreads for sandwiches or crackers. Black eyed peas pairs really well with cooked collard greens. I have a recipe that I learned from a friend of mine who lived in Africa. Maybe I'll share in the future too. So it pairs really well with collard greens. Black beans, it's a popular bean where I come from Brazil. So you can eat them in burritos and enchiladas, refried beans. You can also use your black beans for the Seventh-day Adventist famous haystacks that we eat in potlucks commonly. Bean patties. In Brazil, we have a popular dish called feijoada, which traditionally they add all kinds of meats, but in the vegetarian style, we add all kinds of vegetables, like you can see here. And it's a delicious dish that I can present in the future too. And believe it or not, you can use black beans in desserts. You can make brownies using black beans as one of the ingredients. Pinto beans is very popular in Mexican dishes, but you can also use in, for chili, for soups, stews, and salads. You can make spreads or dips. And lentils are very popular as well. I think worldwide, most people enjoy lentils. You can eat in the form of soups. Lentils are also very good to replace ground beef in recipes, whether it's a lasagna recipe or if you're making a veggie meatloaf, such as what you can see here. And what we are going to be cooking today is a dal, which is an Indian style cooking the lentils. Split peas or green split peas or different colors of split peas can also be used in soups, in patties. They cook in a shorter time than beans, and so do lentils. So depending on how much time you have, you can, choose different types of pulses for your meals. The next question, the last poll question we have today, and it brings, it goes along with what we have in the slide here. We can use pulses in desserts. So I have the next question Angel's gonna release for us. Have you tried a dessert made with a pulse, and did you like it? Most people haven't tried but are open to try, so that's good. The second group, 39%, have tried and liked it. So I'm in this group. I have tried the black bean brownies and I have tried chickpea cookies, and I like both. We have two who have tried but didn't like it. Thank you for your honesty. And have two that haven't tried and don't think would even try. But that's fine. If you want honesty, thank you for answering the poll question. Yeah, so I have tried the black bean brownies and the chickpea cookies, and I have used the liquids from the garbanzo beans called aquafaba as a binder to make granola as well. So there are several ways. If you want to explore more recipes, Forks Over Knives, it's one of those good places for recipes with pulses. You can also incorporate more pulses in your food choices by selecting some minimally processed foods that you can buy to, and if you don't have time to cook things from scratch all the time. So mixed vegetables, they tend to include peas. So that could be an option. There are several brands now making pasta-based products out of pulses, lentils, peas, garbanzo beans. You can find some frozen meals. You can find a variety of canned beans, lentils, or peas. You can even find pizza crust made from chickpeas, which is also, most of those products are also gluten-free. So if somebody's intolerant to gluten or allergic to gluten, you can also move towards this type of products. Pulses are mentioned in the Bible. It's part of the original diets mentioned in Genesis 1:29. I think we'll be part of the diet of the new earth. According to Isaiah 65, verses 21 and 22, we're going to be planting and eating from what we plant. So I believe if it was part of the original diet, I think we'll be back. It's mentioned a few other times in the Bible, including the famous instance when Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. The dish that he was so desperate to get was a stew of lentils. And last but not least, the word pulse you can also find in Daniel, the first chapter of Daniel, in relation to the foods that he requested to, the diet that he requested to be put, him and his friends. But in this case, it's important to notice that the Strong's Concordance, which looks at the original meaning of the word, shows that the definition here is not just pulses as in beans, lentils, or peas, but is a generic name for something sown. So in other words, most likely what he requested was a vegetarian diet, not just a diet made of beans, lentils, or peas. You also have on a healthy message the description that beans, lentils, and peas are part of a wholesome diet, but some persons cannot digest beans and beans. Ellen White herself was one of them. So she mentions in several parts of her writing that she could not digest beans, peas, or lentils. So I think we have enough evidence to incorporate more pulses in our dietary choices, ideally every day if possible. This is another great resource, the pulses.org website. They have recipes, they have cooking tips, they have meals ideas, so you can plan your meal for the whole week. And we're going to have questions and answers a little bit later because I need to move to the cooking demo part. But before I do that, I want to announce the Joy of Eating contest that we have for this month. So it would be helpful if you join the Facebook page, Joy of Eating Club. So the contest is going to consist of posting pictures of pulses-based dishes that you'll be making between today and our next meeting, which is the 3rd Thursday of August, along with the recipe or description on how you made it. In next meeting, we are going to all together look at those pictures and vote which one sounds like the winner. And we can, base the criteria on whatever you think. The picture looks great, or it looks appealing, or it's an easy recipe. The criteria is free for each person to choose. And the prize is going to be orca beans. I should have created another question here to see how many of you have heard of orca beans. I had never heard of orca beans. Phil is the one who suggested orca beans as the prize, just to be something different. So we're gonna send to your house, I don't know how much, but a sample of orca beans for you to try. So that's the contest, so you can jump on it right away, starting today.